This is part 2 of the same session we started earlier today, and I said I was going to get off of this thing. I will. And this is where we cover a couple of things like enhancements, right? Application enhancements, solution enhancements. This is the area where I like to focus on a couple of things, right? Which is all the enhancements that we have done behind our patch management solution, right? In terms of, Windows 10, cumulative updates, Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows 10 cumulative updates. We'll talk about Office 365 click-to-run patching, which is a feature that was added into 8.1, and something that we actually backported to. But we'll talk about that at a later time. With that said, let's go ahead and get started. So as you notice here, one of the biggest things that we added into 8.1 that we've always planned for 8.1 was Microsoft changed the way they're doing patches right now, right? There's not your individual patches. It's not the one thing where you get to pick and choose what you're distributing out to the field. Now it's all or nothing. I mean, there's a reason why they did that, right? Is to try to keep that configuration management chain a little narrower, right, than they have done in the past. With that said, we did a couple of things, right? We are now supporting all of the cumulative updates, as you can see here, for all, not only Windows 10, but other OSs as well. Windows 7, 8.1, monthly roll-ups, security updates. And a big one here is the Office 365 click to run, okay? Is anybody doing Office 365 today, click to run? Yeah, I thought so. All right, obviously you probably are painfully familiar with the way that Microsoft told you how this needed to be patched and sharing up, setting up DFS shares and yada, yada. You know the gist of that if you've done it before. So there's a couple of things that we did here to assist pretty much all of our customers for doing this, right? If you look at it, from a 365 updates, it relies on click-to-run option, only downloads missing content. You know all this thing by heart, right? From a semantic perspective, right, we decided to add this functionality right into our patch management engine, okay? So no craziness of setting up DFS or things like that. If you already had, then you can continue to use it, of course. But we built it right into our patch where PM import, bring them down, do the distribution of it, and I'll show you pretty much in the screen, as you can all see, this is how it works, right? As Damon alluded to before, you get the patch data from the patch management PM import. You get your update bits. Basically, the policy goes out to the client and basically modifies the transport file to point to its our deployment mechanism, right? Our site servers and such, our package servers, right? The content gets downloaded to those package servers. Once that client gets the new policy to point to those locations utilizing our infrastructure, then the client can only get the bits that it needs from the site servers. Make sense so far? Okay? So that's pretty much, so again, is the simplification of your Office 365 click to run patching. Any questions about this? I know there are a few of you that have already taken advantage of this. It works well, yes. Yes, sir.
How do you handle the different channels for deferred, first release deferred?
First release deferred, technically.
They each show up as different items within that.
All right, yes. Thank you. Thank you for that. Any other questions so far? Going once, going twice? Go ahead.
So if they don't have a local package server, it's going to just based on your site assignments, pick whatever site server they're assigned to?
Either that, but remember we also added peer-to-peer, which I'll talk about in a second. So you can rely on that technology as well for that. Does that make sense?
Not yet. But
Okay. So ask me the question again.
All
I
right,
probably missed it.
Are you going to get into peer-to-peer?
Yes. Yes, I'm.
What I'm understanding, I've only done a little testing of this so far. You're going to point the client to a local package server.
Mm-hmm.
Peer-to-peer, there is no local package server. You're not actually pointing.
Well, hang on. Well, let me get to peer-to-peer, and then I'll explain it to you, because it's peer-to-peer, but your code bases still behave just as a regular code base that just basically get sent to the agents where they say, I don't have a package server, but I have a distribution point, period. Your code bases are for that guy. That's where you need to go get your files.
Proxy to the client.
Yeah. You'll see it in a minute. All right. All right. With that said, let's move on. So needless to say, We're supporting now 7, 8, Windows 10, cumulative updates, all out of the box. We understand that there were a couple of challenges presented to us by customers, right? Because they're cumulative in nature, this file will continue to grow. What do we do then? Then is when we came out and said, okay, we need to start working on technology to alleviate that problem, right? At the time, Microsoft had not opened any channels for us to start, peeking into the files or anything. I mean, it's all or nothing. And right now, the way that we accomplish that is we introduced that new feature called peer-to-peer client communication, which allows you to do faster distribution of this, whether it's patching, software distribution, anything that you have to do with Alterius, we can handle through peer-to-peer right now. With that said, and I'll touch on that later, basically allows you to have, like as you see here, central control and tracking of all your Windows 8, Windows 7 patching, monthly roll-ups, cumulative updates. You can use that single patch framework to do your patching. I figure everybody here is doing patch management, so I'll save you the time. Somebody's trying to hide from me. Any questions whatsoever in patch?
So for the Office 365 level changes, and it's probably more deeply question, but if the system's only downloading the files it needs, how does it tell the computer if you have computer files?
Can you repeat that?
So it's going bit level downloads for what it needs. Another system says that, hey, I see that package. I need more files than you. How does that?
So it's just the way that P2P works, right? Where, and I guess we can skip ahead. Yeah. There you go. Yep. Okay, so here, let me see. Okay. So let me go into how P2P works first, okay? So basically what happens is you have locations where you have site servers, right? And you have site servers defined for those locations, not a problem, sites and subnets, everything is working fine. And then you have a location that doesn't have a site server. You have enabled P2P. How does it work? Well, basically, accelerating into the presentation, sorry, going back once. The main server, so you set your policy for software distribution, right? Everybody needs to get this package. The package gets out, the policy gets to the endpoints. The endpoint said, okay, I have peer-to-peer I'm enabled for peer-to-peer. The machines start basically building their own cache of, okay, notify me about my local peers on the subnet so that I'm aware of it. At some point, they get hit with a policy to do patch distribution, okay? The machine immediately will go to the command and says, do you have this patch? Do you have this patch? No, I don't. Okay. At that point, one of them is going to go out to the SMP, and basically the SMP is going to say, okay, you're going to be designated, call it a peer master, right? That guy is going to be basically going out to the SMP, getting all the files, or the site server, getting the files that it needs. Once that file makes it down there, then the SMP will send code bases to the rest of the agent and say, okay, that's your local machine to go get the files from. Does that make sense so far? Maybe I know it was, yeah, go ahead. Oh, the animation?
Sorry, I confused you.
Yeah, he built the slides for me. All right, here, let's do this.
Next one. There you go.
There you go. So the machines will basically discover the peers. There you go. They'll get the policy from the SMP. And then it starts questioning the rest of the peers. Does anybody have this package locally? Okay? The machines reply to them, say, no, I don't, or yes, I do. And if you do, then I'm going to attach to you and get the files. There you go. The next time, there you go. Downloads from its peers, gets a new policy. He sends the question. One of them is going to reply, I have the package. Yes, go ahead.
Now, how is master peer selection done? Is it the same one each time, or is there an algorithm that every time you set up a policy that it's going to go out and look? And on that, can you designate what machine to peer?
No, no. Peer-to-peer is peer-to-peer. So basically, this is no different from your traditional No, exactly, torn. I didn't want to say that word, but because freaks people out, man. Okay. Yeah. So this is semantic DNA, guys. This is not some, we didn't get a plugin out from somewhere. This is our DNA, secure. So no, once you set that policy, like I said, it'll scan the guys will scan the network. They'll build their own tables. They'll talk to the SMP. They say we don't have a site server. One of them gets designated sort of as a, I don't know, we don't like using that word, but a peer master. And then the guy will notify the SMP, okay, I'm the peer master. Everybody hold off. I'm going to download the file. The file gets downloaded out to that device, right? Once that file is there, then everybody gets the code bases to attach to that device. So let's say in the future that device goes offline, right? Which is probably, I think that's where you're going with this, maybe.
I was wondering, with each policy, does it go through and redo this, or do we have a separate
Yes. With each policy, it does that. Yeah, because remember,
Based on timing, right? The first one who needs it becomes the master of that.
the first one who needs it, exactly. And by the way, let's say that you have peer-to-peer turn on for everything in your environment. Your site servers are now participating on that same peer-to-peer communication. So they just play along. I'm also another peer, I guess, node for you guys. So if the site server happens to have a file, then he becomes the peer master, right? The source of the files. But if somebody gets it faster than the SMP for some reason of that site server, then it also gets it. There is a couple of features that we're building into this that should be coming up here in the summer that you will see where today, peer-to-peer is based off block level file distribution, not bit level, okay? That's something that we're planning to do. Today, peer-to-peer site servers on peer-to-peer act just as another node of the peer network, okay? That's the way it works today. One of the features that we're building is where on targeted agent settings, you can basically say, if a site server exists, there's a checkbox on any subnet, on any location, he basically holds the golden hat. He's the master. Don't go try to get a peer-to-peer. Get it from this guy. Okay? That's one of the things. Go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt, Tomas. Just when someone asks a question, will you just repeat what they asked, just because of the filming?
Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. And then the other thing that you have is today peer-to-peer. Because you target it to targeted agent settings, that's how you turn it on, okay? It's basically on for everybody. So if you're in cloud-enabled management, it continues to work through cloud-enabled management, right? If you go to a remote office and you got multiple peers in the remote office, it works great. We've had some customers come back and say, what if I don't want it to be on while I'm on SIEM? So we're building also the feature where you can actually check box and say, if you go on SIEM, you have the ability to say, turn off peer-to-peer on SIEM. So you're going to have that feature here coming in the summer. Make sense so far? So that's some of the things that we're doing there. But today, like I say, that's the way it's working. It becomes the master. The next guy who gets the package can become another master. Basically, if another device wakes up in the network in the middle of the night or a couple of days later and says, hey guys, I was asleep during the time you were doing this distribution. I need to get this file. It doesn't necessarily have to be the same guy. Who has it? And totally different machine who says, I got the package, he'll get it from there.
Can you still, like when you do the software policies, say keep this file for X number of days or weeks after it's been installed so they're not building up the software repository on that computer?
Yes.
So we can say keep this package on this peer master for 3 weeks and then delete it, and then if someone needs it, then they can go and request it.
Yes. So the question is, can the file, I got to repeat it. If the file makes it down to that peer master, so to speak, right, is there the capability for us to say, delete this file after a period of time so that cache doesn't continue to grow and grow and grow on those devices that become masters? The answer to that is yes. Okay? So you have that timeout period where you can get rid of them, right, and keep it clean.
Is there any way to block a machine from becoming your master? We have machines that collect data off of like an engine, very high speed connection to that engine getting data value. And if all of a sudden it's now sharing out files and slowing down the hard drive, it would be an issue.
So, God, all right, let me try to repeat that question. Andy's right there like a sniper. I can see you. So the question is, can you block a particular machine from becoming a peer master? No. Now, there are limitations that you can set on, say, number of connections to a device. So, and do we have a screenshot here?
Actually, if you don't mind me stepping back.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so like you would, if you set a policy for something, right? You can split that policy, you can clone that policy. Whatever the policy is, it says this group gets this way, this group gets that way. So think
Yeah.
about it. Whatever the policy is, it's the main policy where you turn on P2P. You just basically clone that policy. Target A, target B. So if your computer is part of target B, it doesn't get the P2P check.
So,
So it's as simple as that.
so there is not one checkbox to say, or this machine will not. It's controlled to targeted agent settings. So you can have multiple targeted agent settings, and let's say that we have a customer that implemented P2P and recently and said, I only want to start with smaller segments just to make sure it works, just to make sure we test it. Then, of course, there's a little more work because now you have to create separate targeted agent settings, exclude, includes, if you know what I'm talking about, most of you, include, exclude. And these machines play with P2P, the rest of the world doesn't. So that's kind of how you get around that if you wanted to.
But I thought the question was,
Can you
do
block?
you want this device to be able to get it from other peers, but not serve as the master?
Correct. I don't want to share out anything because it's just,
But you want it to get it from peer.
if it needs it, yeah.
I can't do that. Can't do that.
Yeah,
That's peer-to-peer altogether. You can't skip the
exactly. Make sense so far? All right. He just called me Vince again. I am not Vince. Just for the record.
That's right, my bad.
Old joke. Old joke.
For the downloads, when it sees that it's going to be a master, it's pulling the file, does it have a certain time period that it hasn't downloaded in, whether it's 5 minutes or 5 days? Will all the other systems hold off until that's all the way down?
Well, I'm going to try to repeat that question. Is there a timeout in which I'm guessing a peer master has to download a file before other devices recognize that it hasn't gotten there, so somebody else is going to take the lead and go get the file? Sort of?
Preventing it from happening.
Yes, there is a timeout where other machines can go get the file. So I don't think we have a screenshot of the peer-to-peer settings here. But if you were to look at the peer-to-peer settings, and we can cover this later on my one migration presentation, and we can probably go look at something. But there is a slew of settings within peer-to-peer where you can set timeouts, where you can set number of devices that can connect to a particular peer. I think out of the box the number is something you probably don't want. It's something about 1,000 if I'm not mistaken. So you before you turn it on, make sure you dial that down to, I think the minimum number is 50. I think that's the minimum number would let you choose is 50 peers can connect to this device. There is a number of timeouts, the number of retries. I think that's what the settings call. Number of retries before somebody is going to have to take the lead. So you can set it 9 retries, 10 retries, whatever, right? And if it doesn't get the file, then somebody else, go somewhere else to go get the file. If that makes sense. Does that help? Yeah, and there is a myriad of settings under peer-to-peer. One of them is the throttling, right? There is an actual throttle that we built, say, okay, this number of devices based on the number of CPU cores that you have on that device as well. Because you don't want to kill a machine that's just a dual core sitting there, low processor, and says, okay, if my minimum is 50, by the number of cores, we do the math and we do that throttling there. Yes, per peer master, so to speak, yes. Yeah, so whoever decides to be the host for packages, right? That throttle applies to them, right? Go ahead.
How is the group of peers determined? Is that by site or by the targeted agent settings policy?
Come back again, I missed that first.
How is the group of peers determined? Is that by site or by targeted agent settings policy?
How is the group of peers selected? By site or by targeted agent settings? So let's assume for a second we take P2P, and we turn it on globally, right? Let's say that each table here is a site, it's a location, right? If you turn it on globally, this solution is meant to work such as if he requires a package, he sends a broadcast command out to its local group. By nature, no commercial router, no enterprise class router will allow you to pass that broadcast command across, right? He stays within the subnet. He builds his own, call it ARP table, or he builds his own table of local peers that he's aware of. One of them will go get the package, it will come up. The only time where you would see a client bridging a network, and this has happened, right, is when a particular client belongs to two different subnets, so it's aware of two separate networks. At that point, he becomes a bridge. It becomes, call it a router for P2P. Where we've seen this with users that are particular in enterprises where they have lots of wireless locations. Like right here, we're in wireless, and they come to their desktop and they dock their machines, and they don't have a utility that does the automatic Wi-Fi turn off, right? Now they're bridging two networks, wireless and wired. Where we've seen this in the past, we've seen a customer, for example, sitting on the local network, VPNing in for some reason, but it happened. It did happen. I mean, it could have been an accident, right? Now he's bridging two networks, right? And at that point, you'll see cross-traffic occur across the multiple segments. If none of those cases happen, they will respect the local segment. There is an additional setting on peer-to-peer communication, which is where you can add multiple subnets to a peer-to-peer rule. So let's say, for example, I have my target agent settings. Let's make this non-complicated. I'm not highly distributed. I got a building or two. So it's easier for me to just split targeted agent settings for building A, targeted agent settings for building B. I'm going to turn on P2P. But my building is 7 stories high. Maybe I want to make a decision so that everybody participates on that peer-to-peer because we're all within the same location, high bandwidth. Well, on P2P, if you target that building with one targeted agent settings, you can add the multiple subnets that you're aware on that site and say, all of you are going to participate in the same peer-to-peer network. Does that make sense so far? So did that help answer your question? Awesome. Thank you.
Just to make that clear, that's totally optional. By default, it will discover its own networks and everything.
Exactly. It's totally optional. It will discover its own network, build its own table, right, and be aware of its local peers. Even though that machine already is aware of everybody in the network, P2P, it's only going to look at known subnets, if that makes sense. Okay? Yes, sir.
I want to ask on that, because I have a lot of smaller sites that are maybe like 10, 15 units at site.
Mm-hmm.
And like right now, because they're out in areas that have like 6 meg bandwidth, things like that, I'm putting a site server out there, which is a total waste, but I'm still doing it. If I did this peer-to-peer, I could remove that site server, because all I have to do is make one of those master, and then it will supplement as that site, well, it will basically act as a site server for all the rest of the
So
units.
I'm going to paraphrase your question. So
Yeah.
if I have a remote site, so right now he has remote sites, obviously, that have 10, 12 machines per site with a site server dedicated. He wants to start basically pulling back hardware and repurposing the hardware. Can he use peer-to-peer in lieu of having a site server? So the answer to that is yes. But you wouldn't designate one guy. You designate the site. And one of them at any particular point in time will pick up the hat and go, oh, that's me today, right? Or that's me the next hour, and so on. Okay?
That doesn't cover tasks in Pixie, correct?
That does not cover tasks for Pixie. That's correct. This is for package content distribution. So your software management, your patch management type stuff, right? Not tasks, nothing like that. Okay? Any additional? Yes?
So in a situation where let's just say you've got an half network with 25 endpoints trying to download a 100 gigabyte package all at the same time. If one peer becomes the master at that point, and he's trying to download, but the other one is waiting, won't they eventually be their own master because it just never gets to that point?
So the question is, I gotta repeat the question, sorry. The question is whether, yes, if I have a remote site that is downloading a file, a 50, 100 gig file for some reason, right? And because of the download time and the bandwidth level, I'm guessing, it's taking a while. And the question is, wouldn't everybody then absolutely become a peer master? The answer to that is no. At that point, remember when I told you in the settings you can set out a timeout? Then the next guy will take over and try to do that. But you have to have that timeout. So you gotta be, I guess you gotta plan accordingly, right? To see what file sizes you're sending down the pipe so that you can have that timeout a little longer, because you don't want to run into a situation where a download is already occurring and somebody's gonna go retry it because you didn't give it enough time, if that makes sense.
So if you don't give it enough,
It could happen that one more machine will do it, not all of them at the same time, because remember, peer-to-peer is peer-to-peer. They all are bound by that rule. So they're not all supposed to go out at the same time and get it.
So instead of you're downloading multiple packages to that site, and if all the PCs at my site only has 100 gigs available disk space, doesn't do it do a disk check to see how much space available for a download, and then what happens if you need some files and it's already the capacity is not available? Do you get some kind of a clear report that will show the failure, or it's not for these systems?
So the question is, what happens when peer-to-peer is on, they're getting their files from peer-to-peer, but maybe one of the local devices or multiple local devices did not have enough hard drive space. Is there a report or anything that I guess proactively will tell you or allow you to see into those devices? Today, I am not aware of such report, to be honest with you. But that's something that we can find out and we can pick up after the fact, right, and follow up on. But no, today I'm not aware of such report. In that case, though, if a machine just basically cannot download and you have those timeout settings, then eventually one of those devices will go pull it from the device with enough space, unless none of them had enough space, which is really an oddity. They will go pull it from the closest site server that is, I guess, closest to the notification server at that point.
So in order to use peer-to-peer, it should be, I guess, some kind of mandate to say that we need to have X amount of disk space in order to target the site, right?
Yeah,
Can I add to that?
Go ahead.
There's no additional space being taken. They're not caching packages, as I understand it, for other peers. It's only packages they have assigned to them already that they would have already downloaded.
Correct.
The only difference is they're saying, hey, I already have a copy of that. You don't have to go across the WAN.
Exactly.
It's not like a big repository, like a package server where it's storing everything. It's only things they would already have cached anyway.
Yeah, thank you. Perfect. Sorry. Yes, sir.
Isn't basically the peer-to-peer, like the master download, is it not per policy? I mean, so every single policy, whether it's patch or software or whatever, it's not the master for every single
It-
session, it's per session, right?
Yeah, so I gotta repeat. Sorry. So so basically his statement / question was, so peer-to-peer is only based off of policy. So if you do get a policy, you're supposed to get the one file. It's not meant to be a master repository for all of your packages. That is correct. So your assessment is correct there. It's only based on policy. If I send a patch, go pick up your patch. Then they do the peer-to-peer negotiation, get the code bases. All right, I'm going to download that one file for that one policy. I'm going to keep it for X amount of days. Then I'm going to clean it up if nobody requests it, right? Make sense? Okay. Yes, sir.
Question. Is there a simultaneous download peer-to-peer limitation? Is that a setting that you can set? Is there, ability to throttle along with that?
Is there an ability to throttle?
If you're going peer-to-peer, what is our limitation? Is it 5, 10, 15, 20? Do you set that? How many peers it will actually?
You can. So is there a limitation or is there throttling on the number of peers that can connect to a master? Yes, sir. You can set that on targeted agent settings under your peer-to-peer configuration, as I mentioned before, the number of peers that can connect to any particular master. So you can set it to 50, I think is the minimum. You can set it to 100, 1,000, you know, knock yourself out, right, type thing.
You say 50 is the minimum, but Windows 7 or Windows 10 OS doesn't support that many connections. Right?
Yeah, so.
Set to 50. Are you even going to be waiting?
Mike, that's a good question for Mike. Mike, do you know the answer to this? Or Max? So on peer-to-peer, one of the things that we know on the peer-to-peer settings, I think there is a minimum and a maximum. I think out of the box is a couple of hundred, if not 1,000. I can't remember. But the minimum number that you can set for peer-to-peer communications, where a peer master can hold X many connections, is 50. But I think that's what we saw there. So his question is, but Windows 10 is only supposed to handle 20 connections. I was not aware of that for some reason. So, Mike, do you know the answer to that? It's something we can follow up on, definitely, and get you an answer. Get everybody an answer. We'll post it in Connect.
The only limiting factor for that is the whatever the IIS server on that box is able to handle. If you're referring to that thing, yeah, well, it still has the small IIS version what's inside. So whatever limitations are bound there, we do respect those definitely, and it's more of a throttling mechanism for us.
Okay, perfect. And we can follow up. We can do a follow up on that.
Switch gears a little bit here. From a security standpoint, what prevents a bad actor from emulating a peer and providing bad data to
The same encryption mechanisms are in place as they are for client-server communication and regular package download. So you have that check that if it doesn't match what got sent, the package is marked as a corrupt package. So, I think it's checksums, right, Mike? Checksums, and then we have client-server encryption using different methodologies for encryption as well. So, you know, to add somebody in the middle, no. Yeah, we're protected against that. So, yeah. All right. So, if there's no more questions, I got additional.
Can I ask one more?
Yes, sir.
Make sure I understand. So when you have P2P turned on and it's going back to a site server that's remote, it still goes from it doesn't use the peer-to-peer numbers, it uses whatever other bandwidth routing settings that you have as if it was like the older settings. Would that be accurate?
Can you repeat the first part only? I got the second.
P2P, so if you have P2P turned on and it needs to go to the master to download the package, does it download at the P2P speed if that server is remote, or does it use a normal or the older?
So the question is, does P2P support basically bandwidth throttling to download from a remote site? And I think somebody answered that already. Max?
Yeah. So treat the P2P as just a way to distribute the data within the subnet. Everything else is just the same standard package downloads.
Yeah. Standard package methodology, they all respect, yeah. Okay. So with that said, I am way over time. Like I said, this presentation will be shared. He's looking, huh?
We do Linux too.
Yeah, and we do Linux too, guys. Yes. So with that said, guys, sorry for the short, but we had a lot of questions on P2P. Up next is Brian Sheedy. Thank you. My batting 1,000 today.
Okay, so we're going to continue with the rest of the solutions. You know, it's not all about patch management here. We do have other solutions. So in this case, we are going to look at software management solution. So we're looking at the enhancements, changes, benefits, all wonderful things that have happened to this in 8.1. All right, let's go through them line by line. So we now have managed delivery progress status. Okay, so yes, we've got all sorts of statuses for software delivery. You think about it, okay, I just requested the package, I just got it, I'm going to install it. We have all of that. We've had it for well over 10 years. But we're introducing progress status to give a little more clarity into let's say, the life cycle of a piece of software through the organization.
So it's in the managed software delivery settings and the managed software delivery policy. Okay, you'll see this right in the bottom, a little checkbox that says, hey, give me this data. It's almost like a verbose method of software delivery statuses. So what does it look like? So we have differing, there's a data class. I think it's a huge named data class. Basically, it will enter the status. So is it not started? Is it running? Is it deferred? Is it rebooting or completed? So think about making a software managed software delivery policy. You send it down there. We know all of the path once it starts. Starts downloading, starts installing. We have all that. But what we don't have is what's it doing right now? Like, has it not started at all? Is it running right now? Right? Is it deferred? And you know what I mean by deferred. If you set the policy to allow the user to defer it, it's a checkbox, right? So they'll see the policy appear and they'll say, we're about to install software, and you have that option. You can defer it for a certain amount of time. There's now a status to say the user deferred it. So you can report on that. Rebooting is actually when it's already gone through. Like, we can tell you that it needs a reboot, but we don't tell you that it's in the process of rebooting. So that's been added, as well as in the end, completed, right? Absolutely completed means the whole process went through. Okay, we've also added some wonderful things to the software components import. So this is the right-click import functionality when we bring in a piece of software, an MSI or whatever it might be, into the software catalog. So get ready for the applause. You ready? No, hey, there we go. Thanks, Mike. Wow. Okay, so yes, some wonderful things about this. So the Java applet's been removed. No major deal there. It's just, we're using a different interface and so on and so forth. So now what you've got is really fast file upload. I'm not going to say it's 20 times faster, but it is certainly faster than the Java was. I was bringing in all sorts of stuff like some Office updates and things like that. I just wanted to test one. About 300 megs, it literally zips right in. Okay, so faster file upload definitely allows you to create custom folders now. So you're not stuck with just right-click import, and however it looks, it shows in here. You can make multiple folders. So think about what you can do with that. Let's say you had multiple platforms or multiple installations, even whole MST folders and so on. You can make your structure, and this is what it's going to appear like on the client when it downloads it, right? So multiple, and you could also call different executables. So we can create custom folders right in this interface. We don't have to manipulate the package later. You have zip and DMG preview. So if you import a zip file, it's actually going to show you all the components inside. Same with DMGs. Okay, so you can take a look at them. You can set the file executable, etc., right? You can also include multiple packages in the same import. So this example here is absolutely ridiculous, right? There's 3 differing pieces of software. What do we have there? We have a Visio viewer, a Word viewer, and Adobe Acrobat at the same time. You may not ever do that, but what we're saying here is you can import multiple packages in there and have them delivered at the same time. And then, of course, your managed software delivery could execute, let's say, a batch file that does viewer, this, and that. Many different scenarios can be done, even though that seems a little unlikely. But multiple packages. Okay, add or edit package dialog box has all of these same settings. So if you go into, yep, go ahead.
So what about
Prerequisites?
Yeah, like for software.
Right.
Can you dump those?
Yes, so in this case here, this is just the import. The question is, can you add the prereqs? So things that would be like, detection rules and applicability and so on? No. This is the first stage, right? So this is where you just bring the files and everything in and set which one is the executable. After you've got it into the software catalog or you've imported it in, that's where you define, or it automatically defines what the dependencies are and the applicability rules and so on. Yep, sorry. Yep.
Can you select multiple installation files so that it brings in all your command lines?
Right. So in the if we can go back one slide, in this version, this is the right-click import software. No. You set one executable. In This one, let's go to the next one, this is where you would set the multiple. So once it's in the catalog, then you can go in and edit it and then choose multiple executables. Okay?
And it's still going to do the import functionality to import all the command lines if the executable or MSI has a decently written application.
Right. Yeah, it still will import everything that it was supposed to import in the first place. Yeah. Sorry, another question?
In regards to the zip import, zip preview, is it automatically extract the files out for you so you can say, have a zip file with a bunch of QCs in it to extract it automatically, or do I have to build that?
Right. Okay, so the question is, if you look at this diagram here, and we're looking at the DMG or zip file, when you does it actually do the decompression or the expansion of it? And the answer, I believe, is no on that. This is for view only. So within here, I can set some parameters to it and say that's the executable, but I don't believe it will actually expand it when it delivers it. Okay, correct me if I'm wrong. So if we're looking at the a zip file that's included in a software import, it's showing me exactly what's in that zip file in this view, but when I go to deliver the package itself, it doesn't do the expanding of the zip file. It just puts down a zip file, correct? Yeah, so it does not decompress it or uncompress it. Yeah, do you want it to? Feature request coming up. I did not see that. Are you talking about a dialog box that appears? Thank you. So there is an extra step. So when you go to the next on this, it will at least tell you, ask you, do you want to uncompress it in the import or not? Apologies, I haven't seen that in the lab, but I believe you. Yep, one more.
I have a comment. We have dealt with this. It will not allow you to upload a folder. You actually have to create the folder and then upload files into the folder.
That's right. Okay, yeah, so the only exception, yes, no more Java, but there's a cost. The cost is it will not import the folders. So imagine, if you will, you have Adobe Acrobat, and it's the MSI version. And it's got its little Adobe language folders and all that kind of stuff. When you import it, it ignores the folders. Okay, do you understand me so far? Okay, so what you have to do is create the folder and import the files from that point on. What was there an annoyance to that you're?
Yes, there's an annoyance, but the current workaround until the entire system goes to HTML5 is that you can zip the file with the folders.
Thank you.
And when you upload it, it will give you the option to unzip it as is.
Right.
And then you then have the folder structure. So it's a little more
Right.
packaging and
Yeah, so it is a what he's referring to is it's a slightly cumbersome step, but if you took what I just referred to, that Adobe Acrobat install, and you took that whole directory with the with the folders and everything in it, you zip it, right? And you go right-click, software import. When you bring it in, it will actually say, do you want to decompress these? When you decompress them, all the folders appear, right? So there might be an extra step, and again, this is until we look at the next phase in HTML5 development. Yep.
One thing you heard of Java, most Java installers, they don't want to put in an MSI or EXE. Like the Oracle installer, all their stuff is subfolder, subfolder, subfolder,
Right.
subfolder, subfolder.
Right.
So you have to zip all that up, because trying to make all those folders, you spell it wrong or you get something
Yes.
wrong, it won't run.
Yeah. So just be aware, there is another step. If your your package that you're bringing in has folders, zip it first, bring it in, and then it'll ask you whether you want to or not. Okay? Yep.
Are these options in ASDK?
In the ASDK, I do not know. As far as the importing, like a component to import.
Yeah, I mean these new options. Are they added?
Right. Max, would you know if these are in the ASDK yet? For the new options, the non-Java options in software import? Probably have to find out for you. Feel free to email me on that one. I could find out. Yep. Just the ASDK? Okay. Great. Okay, so that's just the software importer. So again, they are available in the The add or edit package options too. They're exact same options on that. All right, asset management. How many asset users here? Nice, my favorite kind of people. Okay, so asset management CMDB solution, some of the enhancements we've seen here is software license migration in ITMS 8.1. So how many people are using the 8.0 software asset management, per node, per user, the different calculations, right? So we have a new model, as you see, right? So if you've already got 8.0, or so actually let's start with 7. So in 7, we didn't have that option. You have per installed node or concurrent use, and that's how it's defined. So whatever you have in 7 today, and you're going to migrate to 8.1, let's say, it'll create a new license rule for you. Again, this is the calculation to determine whether it's per device, per user, or per processor core. So it'll create a new rule. It'll set it to per device as a default, which is really no different than the per installed node you had before. So it automatically creates a rule for you. And then what you do as a user is you go and correct it if it's not a per device. So for instance, if you were tracking SQL Server licenses back in 7.5, 7.6, and it's set to per installed node, but you want it to be per core processor, you would come back in after the migration, set it to per core processor. Okay? It can't be psychic. It's not a deficiency in the product, but we can't be psychic in knowing what you want to select. So we default as per device. 8.0, if you've already set up all your software asset management and all your rules and everything, it'll just bring it over as is. Okay, whatever rule you defined stays, and it just brings it over. Okay, some usability changes. You'll notice right away, I should have got another symbol for this one. ActiveX Flex Grid is gone. Right? Do I need applause for that? No, we're good? Okay, that's great, all right. So really looks great. I'm a big asset fan. I've been consulting on it for years and years. So I don't know how to pronounce this. Please correct me if there's a new word for this. W2UIJS. I know it's JavaScript something. What's W2UI? Is there a cute name for it so I pronounce it right? No, it's W2UI. Okay, good enough. So that's what it's been replaced with. So if you're familiar with that. We solved several grid rendering issues. So you probably noticed that in some cases, whether it's non-inventoried installs or the cost center division, you had some strange little artifacts. Now this has resolved those. Okay, improved usability of the lookup ones. So think about when you add a cost center or you define any kind of selectable item in a multi-row part of the form. You now, instead of just having an item where you select it and then you have to go look up, it's right inside the cell itself. Okay, so it'll show a link, blue with the underscore, sort of like a hyperlink, and there'll be ellipses there for you to select items within. Okay, resource association diagram. It works. It works everywhere. You can even do it on your NS now. You don't have to go F12 options in Internet Explorer. Okay, so there's been some changes to that. We replaced Flash, so that's gone, with HTML5. Okay, a lot faster performance, and you can view a larger screen. So if you got one of these huge, 3,200 pixels by 6,000 pixels, you can display that now. Okay, so larger display, it's faster. Improved diagram controls, so you can actually change, it's a lot easier to change the different items you want to show, whether it's a bunch of resources versus cost center and so on. It's easily clickable. And also the display controls. So they're very active. You get the diagram on there and you slide it back and forth and you'll see it real time. You don't have to wait for a super long refresh for it. Okay, any questions on asset? There's some big display changes there for sure. Okay, you'll notice it right away when you start doing data entry and so on. All right, inventory. Some of the high level changes. Now, of course, don't forget, you can go into any solution guides, what do they call it, the release notes, to find out even more detail than this. Okay, so obviously we saw that there's the SEP data integration. Okay, so this is through the inventory solution agent. And we know what it does. It evaluates anything past SEP 12, right? So it's data from Windows and Mac Windows and Mac profiles. Okay, it collects all this information into this data class, inventory software SEP agent. And what does it get? It gets the agent presence, the agent version, SEP agent, whether it's managed or not, as well as the SEPM server name and its IP. So that's great information to have when you're doing combined reporting, right? What's my security stance versus my inventory? You know, where are the unsafe items, or where are the ones that aren't meeting the security policy in location or cost center? So if you have a mixture of CMS, SMS, and AMS, you can get data from all of those and include them with SEP data to make quite a few reports or actions. Yep.
So did you say it's after SEP 12? So SEP 12?
Yeah, this is for SEP 12 and greater, right?
All versions of SEP 12?
Yes, it is all versions of SEP 12. Yeah. And it says right in the release notes, 12.0 on. Yep. Okay, what else we got? We also have a SEP agent data class that's selected in the default inventories. So if you go and make an inventory policy, it'll actually be selected. You can see here where it selects it. It's sitting in with the common areas. Right? So if you select software inventory, it's included as the data. Okay, so we also reworked the product filters. Okay, so this is the software product filters. If you go into the software view, you'll see that in the filters pane in the middle. You'll see that we use different, let's say, wildcards and search parameters. And you will also see it in the software product itself. So if we look at that area, so in the software product, you have the three things: what's the name, what's the company, and what's the version. So that will actually show there. The way you actually do a wildcard is different was different in the filter than it was in the software product itself. So what they've done is they've unified the method in which you do wildcards and searches. Okay, so one might have been, Windows plus 2016, and the other one would be Windows Pipe 2016. Right? Now it's all one common method. That is recorded in the inventory solution guide, and you'll see it in lots of. You'll also see it in other references in the books. So in this case, we don't need the SQL anymore. If you're really deep into how you create software products and so on, and you get right into the database, one of the requirements is to have a SQL query for a software product. And it's basically just a query that represents what you're saying in those fields. That requirement is gone now. Okay, we also have a new set of data classes. So inventory normalized software product filters it replaced what we always knew as inventory software product filters. Okay, so there's a new one called normalized. That means that it's a common data set for both the filters themselves and the product itself, and they both go to that to look up how to search things. Okay, so these are all converted to a new common format. If you have old filters, if you've defined your software products by yourself manually, all of those will be automatically converted and brought over to this normalized software product filters data class. So you don't have to worry about it just keeping the old stuff in a different place. Okay, so there's definitely performance improvements, improved expression parsing. So it's much clearer to know that if you want Windows 8 and Windows 10, you go Windows 8, pipe, Windows 10, right? So there are more common expressions. Okay, Audit Plus. So again, we know this is the file property scan. This is the one executable that goes out and finds out if you say there's 10 types of file types I want to scan. I want to know how many are in there, what type they are, and so on. This one has a few changes to it. So we have a 64-bit now. So you're not running the 32-bit of the Audit Plus. Okay, we've changed the old Microsoft Access database and replaced it with SQLite DB. So this is the file called filescan.db that sits on your computer right now, regardless of version. Okay, so some people wanted to investigate the inventory that was coming back. If you don't believe that a certain computer has, 2 terabytes of MP3s, if you think there's something wrong with your database, you can go in and you can look at this filescan.db file in any kind of viewer. Couldn't do that before. You had specialized tools you had to use. Now you can just get any SQLite viewer out there go into the file scan.db and actually see it formatted nicely. Okay, and we can also view this, as they say, you can view it with pretty much any SQLite viewer. So if you're really deep into the inventory data, you can now use a simple SQLite viewer to do that. Okay, deployment. All right, so we have XFS file system support for Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7. Okay, so this includes creating, deploying, and partitioning disks, as well as scripted OS for this operating system. WinPE 10 version 15.11 support, so you can import, you can create your boot disk, your boot environment with WinPE 10 now. And again, this works with all of the standard options you would use with PE, of course. Right, so pre-OS stuff like imaging, disk partitioning, disk management. Okay, this is an info document, info 3561 for the ASDK installation. That means this will give you the instructions to get the wake into the system, because we don't provide that out of the box, remember. Okay, thin client support. Any big users of thin clients? The ones identified on the screen here? Okay, well, we have thin client support now. So this has been tested on HPT 520s and Dell 7020s. Okay, and it also works with Windows 7 Embedded as well as Windows 10 IoT Enterprise. Okay, and PC Transplant, how many people still using it? Look at that, awesome, okay. So it supports Office 365. So you'll have that as a choice of pulling settings and so on. Okay, and Rapid Deploy decommissioned at this release. Let's just all salute Rapid Deploy. Oh, we got some tears in the back. All right, so obviously we support the Ghost engine and so on. I miss it already. Okay, that's just so you know, if you have currently running things with Rapid Deploy scripts and so on, in this version it's not included. Yeah.
It's not really true though, so that code is pretty good. Rapid deploy, there's a little bit of stuff in there.
Are you saying, okay. Could you repeat that question, sir? Are you not engineering?
That's very good multi-passing capability.
Yes, we know.
That's master, slave, signing on, there's some good code in there. Can't that be saved and transformed into code?
I think you should have a meeting with Max on that one. Yeah. Okay, don't forget we merged as a company a while back, right? We got this, Ghost or Rapid Deploy. Something's got to go. Can't deploy two things. All right. So RTSM, it's a real-time system manager. So how many people use the KVM viewer or even knew there was a KVM viewer in there, right? Okay. So obviously special circumstance. This is relying on the Intel technology, right? AMT and vPro and stuff like that. This is not like PC Anywhere, guys, where you put an agent down and just remote. So remember that. Okay, so now it's based on HTML5. So if you know the old interface, it was a little different. We have HTML5 support on it, so it supports many browsers now instead of just one or two. Okay, this is what it looks like. Not the best screenshot, but it's basically a remote view of that machine. Okay, so it now shows you the connection status, last run, what is the last operation you did on it, the current client computer power state, what state it's in at the moment, the host name and address, and a few other bits of information. So you can perform these following actions on the KVM viewer. So you can activate or deactivate the KVM viewer session itself, right? It's simple on-off. Run some power options. Okay, so we know restart and reboot and all that stuff. Okay, Control-Alt-Delete action can be done through this interface. It's a simple button right there. Set image compression and color mode. So yes, if you got one of those massive workstations with the 5,000 pixel 4K screens or whatever. Okay, and we could also do fit to screen size and other standard display operations. Okay. All right, so the big thing here is the HTML5. I think if you're a current user of this, this is probably much nicer so you can run it on your Macs and stuff. Okay, workflow. I don't know if we covered this in the original one, but so enhanced ability to create workflow forms. Okay, so the standard form builder that's been around for a while, that's been updated. Okay, so it's using AngularJS or JavaScript. Okay, and these are the items that are actually enhanced with it. So we got making text boxes, date and time boxes, the sub-dialog components, as well as the chart controls, the schedule options, like the time and dates and so on, as well as the grid components. So if you're a big workflow user, this is a major change for you. Okay, we've added this option in the actual project itself. It's just a checkbox. Okay, so this you just choose Show Angular JS Components. Some enhanced security behind it, so we can it'll support TLS encryption. Okay, we also removed the pervasive SQL components. So if you are using those, understand that you must provide a real license now. So in the past, you didn't have to worry about that. It needs to be added to your workflow instance to actually use now. Okay. So for more information, go to tech, big one here, 240123. I didn't make that up. Okay, so if you are using those components, just make sure you know that in the future, you're going to have to provide a licensed version of it. Okay. All right. Any questions so far? We good? Okay. All right, Go Solution Suite. All right, so the installer, we've added a few things. So we have additional software support. So in this case, we got Windows 2016 Server for the client. We support that. Mac OS 10.12 for the client. SQL Enterprise 2016 for the database. 2014 SP2 for the database, as well as Microsoft Office 2016 in PC transplants. So if you're doing the settings migrations, you can support up to Office 2016. Okay, we added an installation readiness check. So this is a thing that obviously is very similar to how our semantic installation manager goes out and checks, makes sure that you have a database, it's connected, you have enough RAM, you have enough space. Really great feature for the initial installation, as well as if you're going to do an upgrade. Okay, so we have two buttons on that. So the check, this reduces the chance of installation failures or initial installation failures. So this checks all of the installation readiness items, like I just mentioned. You have the disk space, you have the SQL, whatever you need, as well as for summarizing all of the information before you go to the next step, which is install. So you'll see a report there. You can also print it out and save it. Okay, and also you have the other option. So before doing an upgrade, it will actually check a lot of system parameters. Okay, so all the required configuration settings, the required it's going to check the required ports, 402, SQL, etc. User rights, obviously, to the database. So if you're installing it and the rights aren't proper, obviously it's not going to be able to create the database tables and so on. Okay, and it's also supporting Korean language. May not be as applicable here, but it's a big thing around the world too. It's a very well-used product. Okay, all right, Pixie Manager. This has been added to the install. So we're not talking about Pixie Manager configuration inside of the previously installed software. So when you're in and you're actually going through the install, it will actually ask you, do you want to install the Pixie Manager, right? It's also another way of modifying your current Pixie Manager installation. So now what you can do is you've got a full implementation of Go Solution Suite. You need to change something about it. You can just run the installer, go through step 3, I think it is. This will appear, and you can do your installs and check it. Okay, so this repairs and reinstalls. You must run it on a Pixie machine that's meant to be modified. So what I mean by that is you don't run this on a remote server and try to connect to it and change its Pixie config. You must run it on the computer that is the Pixie management application. Okay, Doc 9721 will tell you all about this. Console changes. Unified boot disk creator. That's a big applause there, right? So doesn't matter where you are, the boot disk creator is the boot disk creator, right? So it's aligned with the same version and base as the Go Solution tools. So if you're using the tools, that boot disk creator is the same one that's in Ghost Solution Suite. Okay, so there's no differences between them. Okay, enable speed and size option has been restored. So if you've used this in the past, where when you're creating disk images, you used to have the option to do that. Reduce the, do you want to optimize for speed or for compression? That disappeared in the last version. I'm sure you might have missed it. That's back. Okay, and there's a tech article for that. We now support 4K USB drives. Okay, so you can put your Ghost images on there. Remember, that's the key here. You can't put rdeploy images and so on. Okay. All right, so you can use 4K USB drives. And obviously, scripted OS install is not supported. This is strictly for putting the image on that USB key, running a script to make it install the image for you. There's a new firm file format. You can look at the release notes for some of the tech articles behind it. So it's just has some enhanced security to it. Boot to RAM disk option. This is just to alert you that when you go into the console, that option's just been taken out. Nobody ever used it. It's going back to 1998, Windows 98. It was an option to create a RAM disk to install. It's a depreciated feature that nobody uses, and it just was a remnant. So that's removed. And the last thing is the Ghost standard tools are available in multiple languages. Okay, so they used to be just English only. And that's it. Any questions? Yep.
Just a quick one. Do you need new license files when you go from 3.1 to 3.2?
David, are you in here? Mm-hmm. So if you go from 3.1 to 3.2, do you need new licenses? And why is that, Russ? It won't take the 3.1 licenses? Oh, okay. So there was a change in the license file format. And last thing to note on that same note, we also have changed our licensing model on the 8.1 solutions, ITMS, to the slick type. Okay, there are some articles on that. All you have to remember with that is if you're upgrading or migrating over, it'll take care of that. But you should request the new slick licenses for new installs and everything else. Okay, great. Thank you, everybody. Thanks. All right.